Welcome to the Problematic Gaze with me, Dr. Lee Arnott.
And me, Dave Moore.
Each episode, we'll take a piece of pop culture from the last 60 years and examine it through the problematic lens. Is it problematic? If it is problematic, what does that say about society and culture then? And what does it say about society and culture now?
And before we take a deep dive into our chosen topic, we'll look at the news events of the day. We'll look at what was in the TV landscape, and we'll also look at the charts.
Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I'm really good. I've literally, about 5 minutes ago, just had my hand down a toilet.
Oh, nice. Just a regular Sunday afternoon then?
Just a regular Sunday afternoon for me, yes. I just thought I'd give the bathrooms a quick whiz round. You know, the cleaner has a day off on a Sunday here at PG Towers, so I share in the cleaning responsibilities because we are a hands-on production, aren't we?
Some of us are, yes. But I have good news for us. I have good news. Podcast Gazer number 1 has been in touch. Remember last episode, I think it was, we suspected they might have had a stroke mid sending a message. They are alive and well. They've informed us. So panic over.
Fantastic, fantastic. Just need to brush up on their typing skills, I would suggest.
Clearly, yes. Did you see this week, again, something we were talking about last week about Lord Lucan? There's a new documentary about him on the iPlayer. And it's being done. Yeah, and it's called Lucan, hello, and it's been done by the son of the nanny who was murdered. And apparently it's supposed to be mind-boggling because he follows a trail of evidence and is going to identify who Lord Lucan is, apparently. But there we go, just as we were chatting about it last week.
Can I just put my hand up and suggest that by the end of this, however many part series it is, he won't find out where Lord Lucan is?
Yes, I'm probably erring on that side of that caution as well. Yeah.
There's nothing worse than when you click onto a kind of a 6-part Netflix series or a 6-part podcast investigating the disappearance of or the solving of a mystery of, and you get to end of hour 6 and they haven't solved the mystery and you've wasted the 6 hours out of your life.
Yeah.
That's what I like about our podcast, really. We wrap it up towards the end and we reach a satisfying conclusion.
Yes, I completely agree. I did watch a great film this week I'd like to recommend. It's called The Substance. If you like a horror film, it's a bit gory. Demi Moore's in it, and my God, what a sport. The things she gets put through. And I thought it was really nice to see the tradition of horror employing ladies of a certain age and giving them great acting roles. You know, that goes back to Betty Davis and Joan Crawford and Kathy Bates in Misery, you know, still... And it then struck me, I looked up to see how old Demi Moore is. And as further proof, if we need it, of how we've aged differently, Demi Moore is 61 years old. Betty Davis, when she was in Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, was 54. So just to show what a 61-year-old looks like today compared to what a 54-year-old looked like in 1962, I think it was. So, but anyway, great film, very gory.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. You know, I've been thinking a lot about ageism, women and age and ageism this week. And I actually stumbled across an article because it's quite apt for what we're talking about this week about women in their prime. It's an article from 2004 and it's in the Daily Star, I have to say.
Wow.
But it's written by a woman and it's about Madonna's live show that she did in 2004, the Reinvention Tour. And the headline is, Sexy at 45. Now that's stretching it, Madge. And it says, superstar singer Madonna may be bending over backwards to prove she's still got it, but the 45-year-old mum of two's latest offering was a far cry from the raunchy routines and wild scenes of earlier tours. The Like a Virgin singer flung herself around the stage trying to keep up with younger pop rivals like Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera. The result was anything but show-stopping, and there was no sign of the singer's previous headline-grabbing stunts. The ageing singer even ended up sporting a white arm bandage and black knee support when she strained herself. During the show, she tried to roll back the years with a string of old hits. But Madge, who will be 46 in August, could not even muster an encore for fans. And then it goes on to say, one fan who saw her first performance said, all this contorting into different shapes to try to impress us just wasn't washing it. She should stick to being a mum like other women her age.
Wow, gosh, and she's 45 years old. Bloody hell, Belle. So she's even getting it, the age thing then. Wow.
I remember a different article I read a while ago. I think it was from the News of the World or something, when she went on tour in 1993 and she was 35 years old. And the headline was, "Give it up, Grandma."
Gosh, I'm still getting it today. Like old women over a certain age. I mean, the thing about this film, The Substance, is it's all about the aging of and women, what women have to put up with, and how their career on they're perceived as just dead after a certain age. In this case, it's 50. But wow, gosh. Do you know one last thing about Madonna? I was watching an old Top of the Pops last night from 1985, and it was The Gambler was the single that was out, and it had just come in the chart. And Steve Wright, I nearly said Steve Davis there. Steve Wright, the DJ, when he was introducing the song video, he said, and it's another new song from the Sleaze Bag. And this was in 1985. She's only had like how many songs out by this point, and already I was like, oh, that's a bit Steve Wright as well. The Sleaze Bag already. She's got that level anyway. This has turned a bit of a Madonna.
Anyway,
let's crash on because. Time to open the mailbag. Oh, by the way, I can only apologise in advance because the film we've watched this week, I've just been speaking in a Scottish accent a lot all day and yesterday, and I'm very sorry if I do it again, but I can't stop myself. But I do apologise to anybody listening from Scotland in case my accent's appalling. So yeah, we've got more mail, haven't we?
We have. And just cast your mind back, Lee, it's when we first were kind of like floating ideas around for this podcast. And then we got to grips with technology and actually started putting our voices down for posterity and release the podcast. That I never thought in a million years that actually we'd start having people listening and interacting with us and sending us emails. So I'm really chuffed by this.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And here I've got a lovely letter from Gwyneth this week. And I do feel like I'm on That's Life. Gwyneth thoroughly enjoyed the Fawlty Towers episode. We didn't actually, she says, I can't believe you didn't mention that they used to rearrange the sign at the beginning of each episode. I used to love that. I remember one was flowery twats, which made me chuckle as a child. She suggests maybe we look at the Rocky Horror Picture Show. She does confess it's one of her favourite films from the 70s, and she's going to see the live show next weekend. And I was thinking about Rocky Horror because it is a little problematic these days, just in terms of the trans message in it. But I'd love to do it. And Gwyneth would like to see another YouTube History of London, please, from us. So
yes, well, there just aren't enough hours in the day to get everything up and edit and get up there. You know, this is turning into a full-time job here at PG Towers, you know.
Yeah, it is. The wheels of industry are turning.
Might need to start getting paid for it.
Well, yeah. I'll start being such a lazy bastard. Anyway, crashing on. You next.
Yeah. Can I just throw a little bit of trivia at you? You know, Patricia Quinn, she played Magenta, didn't she, in the Rocky Horror Picture Show?
Yes.
And she was actually married to Robert Stevens, who is Maggie Smith's ex-husband, who actually stars in the film alongside Maggie Smith.
Of course she was. I interviewed Patricia Quinn once.
Did you?
After spending a couple of hours in a Costa Coffee in Chiswick, keeping her entertained while she was waiting to go on stage because she rocked up really early. She was lovely, but quite bonkers. And she did look a bit like Gary Glitter, which was a bit weird, but lovely, lovely lady. Really lovely lady.
Oh, well, that's lovely. Thank you, Gwyneth, for that email. And I've got one from a lovely lady called Michelle, who, quite topical, she says, after a terrible election in the US, The Problematic Gays is my go-to soothing podcast. I mean, I don't know if our voices have ever been described as soothing, but thank you, Michelle, for saying that. Sorry, Lee, I've just lost my train of thought for a second. I've got it back now. I'll start again. What are you laughing at?
like watching an android go into, Laurie, reboot me.
I lost my train of thought for a second. All right, so stop it now. Michelle is from Ironclad Creative, which mentors theatre writers, which I think is a really nice thing to do.
Lovely. That's lovely. Thank you, Michelle. And what a lovely job.
Okay, so that's enough of that. Lee, why don't you tell us what we're going to be focusing on today on The Problematic Gays?
Well, we are looking at the film The Prime of Mystery. I've done it again. I'm so sorry. I can't stop the Scottish. It's going to happen more and more, and I can only apologise. We're looking at The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, which was released in UK cinemas on the 24th of February 1969. Now, this is before both of us were born. What's your relationship with the prime of Miss Jean Brodie?
My relationship with hang on. No, let's talk proper.
You from Jerry?
Yeah, my relationship with Are you on the wine too? I need to top up.
Oh, I don't think you do.
Okay. In my finest RP, my relationship with the prime of Miss Jean Brodie is that I've seen it a couple of times before, really loved it. Maggie Smith, powerhouse performance. She won the Oscar for it. Brilliant. I watched it when I was younger, so I probably didn't understand the subtleties and intricacies of what was going on, or, the underlying thread of the film. So from a surface point of view, I really enjoyed the film. And that's about it. I haven't seen it in years and years and years, so it was really nice and refreshing to watch it again in a fresh light, with older eyes, with problematic gaze lens on. How about you?
I'd never seen it. I'd heard of it. But honestly, I knew absolutely nothing about this film going into it. I knew it was Maggie Smith, obviously, but that was it. I knew it was famous. I knew her performance was rightly lauded because she's fucking amazing in it. But the storyline, the plot, the characters, I didn't have a clue. So before we get on to the nitty gritty, should we have a look at what was happening in the UK in 1969, darling?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's do it.
I mean, top of the list in January, the space hopper is introduced to the UK. Did you have a space hopper?
I did. In fact, I think it was probably the only form of exercise I had for about 2 years.
Yeah. For those younger listeners who may not know what a space hopper is, it was like a bright orange bouncy thing that you sat on with two little horns, and it had this crazy kind of monster munchy kind of face painted on them, and they were just fab. Kids would just bounce around on them all summer holidays, wouldn't they? Yeah,
I lived my space hopper, and I just think, actually, if I sat on the space hopper now and tried to bounce around, I'd probably do my back in and be laid up in bed for 3 months.
Or probably burst it, darling.
What you try to say, like?
Nothing. There's some news to our media which is going to affect us even today, when Rupert Murdoch buys the News of the World in January, and in November will relaunch The Sun as a tabloid, and so begins his reign on the press in the UK, which continues to this day.
Is he still with us?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so on the 30th of January, this is a nice one. The Beatles rooftop concert. The Beatles performed together in public for the final time on the rooftop of Apple Records in London. The impromptu concert is broken up by the police in the end. I'm going to say I remember that, but obviously I don't remember it. But I've seen it on TV quite a few times. Did you have a Beatles phase?
No, my dad was into the Beatles, but I never ever did. We sang their songs at school and stuff in the choir, but I never did. Did you?
Yeah, I did. I went through it. Every kind of teenager goes through a phase of something, don't they? Kind of like historic musically. I had, well, first of all, I had a Doors phase. I think that was largely down to the film. Do you remember with Val Kilmer?
Yeah.
I absolutely loved the Doors, had all their albums. And then I went on to the Beatles. Really, really enjoyed them, but not so much now. I mean, I can appreciate them, but it's not something I go to.
Yeah, while you were doing the Beatles, I was doing Cilla Black and Lulu and Sandy Shaw. We're so finger on the pulse as teenagers, weren't we?
All I will say to you, Lee, is that the signs were there from a very early age.
Very early age, love. And in March, the Cray twins are found guilty of murder. Ronnie's found guilty of murdering George Cornell, and Reggie's of murdering Jack the Hat McVitie. And they're sentenced to life imprisonment. It's weird, isn't it, how they become kind of folk heroes? I read last week that the director of the movie The Krays with the Kemp brothers had come out and said actually he wished that he hadn't romanticised their story as much and made them almost these figures of aspiration, because actually their crimes were bloody awful. They were proper. And it was, I mean, they're so emblematic of the kind of end of class, which doesn't really end at all of the 60s, when you feel like barriers are being broken down. So they're able to hobnob with the great and the good in a way that was previously denied working class people. And that's kind of happening at all different levels of society. But yeah, it's odd that they became this folk legend, a bit like Robin Hood, but they're two vile, horrible killers. Anyway, Happy things. Look at what's happening in the end of March, Dave.
I think this is one for you, darling.
Well, Lulu represents the UK with the song Boom Bang a Bang Bang, shares first place at the Eurovision Song Contest in a four-way tie with France, the Netherlands and Spain. It only came out very recently that Franco, who's now in charge of Spain and who's trying to open Spain up, this is when you start to get the rise of Spanish tourism from the UK, he fixes it basically so that Spain wins again. So it's a fix. But actually we end up hosting it the year after.
On the 21st of June, the showing of a television documentary, The Royal Family, attracted more than 13.5 million viewers, more than half the entire UK population at the time, and it's an all-time British record for a non-current event programme. I remember seeing bits of that. I think it was recreated in The Crown as well, wasn't it? Where they let cameras in to record the daily life, the daily grind, I suppose, of the royal family. It was a very strange thing, wasn't it?
Well, I guess it was just, it's this whole thing about they're trying to show they're like us when actually they're really not. You can't let people into the gilded luxury of your palaces and say, we're just like you, really. So whether it was I know they were very reluctant to do anything again until the royal It's a Knockout from 1985 or 86, whenever that was, the abomination that was. On the same day as this, Patrick Troughton regenerates into John Pertwee in Doctor Who, although we don't see John Pertwee, he just drifts off into space. And that could have been the end of Doctor Who. It was due to be pulled at that point. BBC started showing Star Trek, but they realised that they couldn't get another programme quick enough, turned around and devised and created that had the same kind of limitless possibility as Doctor Who. So Doctor Who comes back with John Pertwee. So, but Doctor Who could have ended here and now. What didn't end in this year was this is the year when all the things in Northern Ireland kicks off. There's a peace march, Catholic peace march that turns violent, and then the British Army is brought in the 14th of August, and right there begins the Troubles, which we've talked about many times on this, and it starts 1969. It's a bit grim. It's going to get a lot grimmer in the next couple of years. And we get a new 50p coin.
Wow.
It's interesting. When the 50p coin is introduced, people complain about it, saying it's easily confused with the 10p coin. And I remember every time a coin is introduced, people complain about it, saying, it's too similar to that one, we're going to get confused. When the pound came in, it was like, God, everybody, just shut the fuck up.
Just get a grip. Okay, so 1969. Why don't we have a look at the top grossing movies of the year? Now, the list that we're going to read out is for the US because there isn't a similar list for the UK. Let's have a little look anyway.
Well, number one, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Do you know what I noticed about this top 10? There's a lot of films about men and for men. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Midnight Cowboy, Easy Rider, Paint Your Wagon and True Grit are all kind of variations on westerns or blokey stories. I mean, Easy Rider's the kind of start of the new wave of Hollywood cinema, I guess, when you get this flourishing of creativity about this time. But the rest seems very traditional. And
Midnight Cowboy, though, that's kind of part of the new wave, isn't it? That's with Dustin Hoffman. Great film about a male hustler. Yeah. John Voight.
Yes, that's
John
right.
Voight. Yes.
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie's dad.
So, yeah.
Sorry, I just dropped my headphone. I'm back.
I wish somebody would try and get a bit of professional head on, please, while I'm trying to read out. It looks like you got a vibrator on the table behind you.
You what? I should have tied it up before I got onto Zoom.
Clearly. That thing, yes. What is it?
Dear listener, can I just say it's not a vibrator, it's a can of deodorant and I'll spray it, just so you know. I don't have dildos lying around in my house, thank you very much.
There's one nugget about the top film of the UK. So you have these films like Midnight Cowboy, The Wild Bunch, Easy Rider. You know what the nation's number one movie was in the UK in 1969?
Go on.
Carry On Camping was the nation's number one film. There we go. Give us class, or you can give us shite, and we'll have the shite every time, please.
Yeah, saying that, it's obviously, made its mark on British culture. Barbara Windsor's bra flying off into Kenneth Williams' face.
Absolutely.
You can't get more high class than that, to be honest with you.
You can't.
So let's have a look at the official singles charts from week commencing 19th of February 1969, which is the week the Prime of Miss Jean Brodie was released. So let's start at number 40, Lee. I'm not expecting to know many of these, but we might be pleasantly surprised.
There's quite a few. Yeah, we've got River Deep Mountain High, I Can Tea in the Turn at number 39. She's Not There, Neil MacArthur, number 34. A cover of Hey Jude by Wilson Pickett. I heard it through the grapevine at number 30, Marvin Gaye.
Oh, well, okay. I bow to that one. That's a classic. Stone Cold. You've Lost That Loving Feeling, number 30. The Righteous Brothers. Yeah. Bit of dirge, that really, innit? I don't really like that song.
Yeah, it is. It goes on for a long time. We have got some famous faces, and we've got Tom Jones, we've got Dean Martin, Sandy Shaw's got a hit at number 23. Lily the Pink at number 22. That became a big song, didn't it? Oh, Scylla, Chinchilla Slack at number 18 was Surround Yourself with Sorrow. That's one of her better efforts, I feel. I like that one.
I don't know that one. How does that go?
What do you do when your love breaks up? Do you fall apart like a buttercup? Forget about tomorrow. Surround yourself with sorrow.
This is Dr. Lee Arnott.
Yes. Oh Bloody Is that a cover of a Beatles song? It's not covers a Beatles song. Nina Simone, Glenn Campbell. Who was in the top 10? Okay.
Oh, hang on. Let's just stop. Whoa. Wichita Lineman, Glenn Campbell. Amazing song. Just have to say. Okay, we can move on now.
I'm sure I've heard it.
You will.
Yeah, well.
I can't sing it because it just... You will. You'll know it. You'll know it. I'll send it to you.
Thanks. Right, top 10. Stevie Wonder for Once in My Life. Engelbert Humperdinck at number 9. Martha Reeves and the Vandellas Dancing in the Street at number 7.
Okay, I bow to you. There are some good things here.
Top 5's a bit of a weird one. So The Move, Blackberry Way. I know that song, but I couldn't sing it. Donald Piers, never heard of him. Please Don't Go. I'm Gonna Make You Love Me, Diana Ross and the Supremes. Oh, Where Do You Go To, My Lovely? That's that kind of folky... Yeah. It's a bit like, we step back in time and you're a harmless peasant girl.
And you look like Sasha Distel. That one.
Yeah, yes, you do. Yes, you do. That's the one.
Yes.
Do you want to reveal what's number 1? I've not seen it. Go on, tell me.
Okay, yeah. So, straight in at number 1 is brackets. If Paradise is unbrackets, half as nice. Amen Corner. Now we do know that one. I think that's quite a nice little song there. Nice little ditty. Paradise is half as nice.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. See.
That's quite nice. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. So actually, there were quite a few good ones in there that we knew and have stood the test of time. Yeah. So that's nice. Nice little chart there to coincide with the release of The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie.
No shaky though, obviously, but we can hope for next week.
No. Okay.
Stop, Scottish. Stop it.
Okay, so Lee, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie from 1969. Why don't you just give us a brief synopsis of what the film is about?
The film opens in 1932 and sees Miss Jean Brodie, who is a teacher at the austere Marcia Blaine, an all-girls school in Edinburgh. Unconventional in her approach and teaching, she believes herself to be in the prime of her life. No more Scottish. She has the Brodie set. 4 of her favoured girls she sees as special or malleable and who she favours and takes on excursions. Brodie begins a very sedate and staid affair with Gordon Lowther, the school's music teacher, and who's probably her only remaining chance to marry, but she still has feelings for Teddy Lloyd, the art master, even though he's married with 6 kids. He's clearly still well into her. Sandy, one of the Brodie set, becomes increasingly disillusioned with Miss Brodie and annoyed at Brodie's fixation on Jenny, another of the Brodie set, her apparent beauty. She begins an affair with Lloyd. Did I mention Lloyd's married with 6 kids? But ends it when she realises that Lloyd is still obsessed with Miss Jean Brodie. After another of the Brodie set, Mary McGregor is killed after fleeing to Spain to try and find her brother who's been fighting in the Spanish Civil War, which is a direction I did not expect this film to go into. Brodie is fired from the school and loses everything. Lowther marries another teacher. Lloyd realises he no longer loves her. She's realised she's not in her prime anymore, and that's pretty much her life is over. The final shot sees Sandy leaving the school, her cheeks tear-stained as Brodie's words are heard. Give me a girl at an impressionable age, and she is mine for life. That was
Yes. Bravo, bravo. Before we start this, I have to say that I might need your help in determining what this film was actually about, because I'm still a little bit confused. But I think by being conflicted about it, that is the essence of a good script, when you kind of are conflicted by the stories in it, not quite sure what to make of it, what the themes were, what the overall aim of the film was.
I'm not surprised that you're confused about it, because actually it's not until about halfway through the film that it becomes apparent that it's actually going to be the story of Sandy, one of the young girls in Brodie's set. But it is quite a confusing film, because for the most part, you kind of fall in love with Jean Brodie, as her girls do. And why wouldn't, she's this teacher, she's unconventional, she dresses fabulously, she's such a contrast to the grey, dour, sensible clothes. So, but what the film then does, it shows how her world, which is built on artifice, she has these 4 girls to reflect back at her what she wants, she believes herself to be in her prime, but she's clearly past her prime. And according to the conventions of the day this film's set in, she's a spinster, basically, is what the label that we've been given to her. And so the film is actually how all her stuff comes crashing down. And it is a bit of a weird one, isn't it? It's kind of like the tone's a bit weird. And I mean, the cast are all excellent, but there are some, I can understand why you find it difficult to quantify in some way, because it left me feeling a bit, what did I just watch? Was it a film about a woman coming to terms with being old, which it wasn't really, but it was kind of? Was it a film about a woman being betrayed when she ends up getting betrayed by some of her girls? Was it a film about a really sleazy art teacher who's married with 6 kids but still likes to, it's just lots of different things. And
I think maybe we should talk about Miss Jean Brodie herself and her wider world. So she is a teacher. She has unconventional methods, but as she says herself, this is a conservative school that's dedicated to staying the same, to kind of maintain the status quo, and Miss Jean Brodie comes in and blows all that up. She's met with resistance from the head teacher, played by Celia Johnson, and the wider teaching staff. They all kind of look at her as some sort of outlier who is chipping away at their conservatism and their, staid way of life. Like you say, when we first meet Jean Brodie, she comes across as really exotic, really enigmatic. She talks about the lovers she's had in the past. The kids that she teaches are all enthralled by her. And she is, for all intents and purposes, we're set up to believe is kind of like the heroine of this film, kind of like the anti-hero. She, she's, like I say, she's exotic, she's eloquent, she's very musical in her language, flowery in her language. She wears these beautiful coloured clothing, which is, like you say, is in direct contrast to the dour greyness of the film. So for all intents and purposes, we are set up to like this woman and go along with her beliefs. We're kind of like intoxicated by her, aren't we? But then as the film goes along, they chip away at this kind of what seemingly is actually an artifice of Miss Jean Brodie. We begin to see her weaknesses. We begin to see, some of her girls, well, one girl in particular, start to doubt this romantic vision of the world that she bestows upon them. And, it sets up for some real good conflict between Miss Jean Brodie and Miss Mackay, who's the headmistress, played by Celia Johnson. But I think fundamentally, I think what you need to kind of establish and recognise is that she's had an affair with this art teacher who is married, or not necessarily a sexual affair, or kind of a relationship with this married art teacher. And she's decided to kind of deviate away from that because he's married, etc., and kind of pursue Mr. Lowther, who is, for all intents and purposes, single. He's kind of like an eligible bachelor, and kind of pursue that way of life instead. Fundamentally, it feels as though she's kind of altruistic. She's got a good moral compass.
Yes, yeah. But then what stuff she says to her girls is empowering. But then the more you get to know her, the more you realise actually she's manipulative. She's vain. This is when she finds out that the artist, Teddy Lloyd, when she finds out that all of his drafts, paintings all look like her, you can see that she's thrilled by this. There's a vanity in her which is ugly. And yet she just wants these 4 girls to reflect back at her. I mean, what does she say? She says, the most important things in life are goodness, truth, and beauty. And so that's all she kind of strives for. And she ultimately at the end up looking a bit vacuous. Like she supports Mussolini in Italy, and she supports Franco in Spain, you know, and she hasn't got a clue actually what's happening in either of these places, but she's very much swept up with the idea of a strong leader, a male figure. You know, she's got this fantasy in her head. Later on in the film, she gives a slideshow to her students, so when everything is falling apart around her. And again, I mean, God, Maggie Smith is just absolutely incredible. But she fixates on this story of a young girl, Beatrice, and a much older guy. And there's a quite unsavory element of this film, which I'm sure we'll get onto, but it seems like this relationship has fueled Jean Brodie all her life, and she's swept up in the romanticism of Mussolini as opposed to the actuality of what's occurring in Italy at the time and what fascism actually is. So she just ends up looking a little bit vacuous despite all of her, for all of her pretensions, you know, which is exactly the one thing that she doesn't. And she is a bit callous and she is a bit manipulative. And all she's got really is the idea that she's in her prime, you know. And as we see at the end of the film, when Teddy says to her, "You're not in your prime," and for her, that's that relationship is then over, dead, because he's seen through the artifice. But then she realizes it herself, and that actually she's now a spinster of a certain age and she can't get away with it anymore. It's kind of an existential crisis, you know, on film. But... yeah,
it really is. I mean, it just makes you wonder if she's kind of suffering from some sort of delusion or something, or just some sort of kind of like, she's quite, like you said, she's very vain, and she's quite an egomaniac, I would say. You know, she's swept up in her own drama, isn't she? And that's kind of represented on screen as her over accentuating everything. It's a very kind of it's a powerful performance, but it's very theatrical, isn't it? It's as though she's wearing this mask, as though, you know, there's the inner Jean Brodie, who I feel is pretty repressed in a way, versus the exterior Jean Brodie, who's theatrical, extravagant in her movements, in her speech patterns and things. It feels as though we're dealing with kind of two different personalities here.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the nail on the head there. We're watching an actor playing an actor. You know, we're watching an actor playing acting, you know, and that's what makes her so interesting, I think. The fact that she is, everything about her is construction and artifice. Yeah, can we talk about the big paedophile in the room, please? This is the Mr. Lloyd, the art teacher character. So this is the guy who Miss Brodie's had an affair with. We don't know if it was sexual, but when he basically launches himself on her and kisses her passionately, it seems to be sexual. But he is married already. He's Roman Catholic, so he's got 6 children, and he's behaving on with Miss Jean Brodie. And then later on in the film, he's painting Jenny, who Jean is convinced is the most beautiful of the girls of her set. So she wants her immortalised in paint. And then begins an affair with Sandy. Now, Sandy, another one of the set, by the brilliant Sabrina Franklin, who incidentally was 19 at the time this was filmed. And she is Fraser Hines' girlfriend at the time. So... old Sandy here is going out with Jamie McCrimmon from Doctor Who. Yeah, they were quite the young couple about town in the late 60s, going to all the best parties and stuff. But yeah, she's great. She's great in this, Sabrina Franklin. But first of all, he watches Sandy take her stockings off, and then shows Sandy a picture of his wife and kids that he's painted. And basically tries it on with her, and then sends her off saying, "We can't have you running through the streets like a little whore or something." And then later on in the film, it transpires that they were having an affair, and she's 15 or 16 at this point, and it's like, oh my God.
And a schoolgirl in her school uniform.
And a schoolgirl in her school uniform, yeah. And he's married with 6 kids. And the thing what struck me is that it's just this idea that teenage girls are okay to be bait or to be fair game for guys old enough to be their father, old enough to be their grandfather. I mean, what is that about? Well,
we see that in a lot of things that we watch, don't we? You know, the fact that a young girl would be attracted to a much older man. It's a familiar trope.
Yeah.
But it's a sexual attraction as well, alongside, an attraction to power and authority, etc. It's pretty unpalatable. But also, I feel to extend that even further, I think Jean Brodie herself, a woman, kind of encourages, not the affair with Sandy, but encourages her other young girl, Jenny, to... she talks about, Jenny is going to be a person who isn't going to want for much because she's going to use her feminine wiles to get what she wants. In fact, she sexualizes Jenny at a very young age and encourages her to pose for the art teacher at a very young age as well.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder
absolutely.
if this was just like the norm in the 60s, which I suppose it kind of was. I don't think this was kind of showing us anything controversial in their eyes. It was just, young girls mature very early and develop very early and are encouraged to use their feminine wiles to get on in life.
Well, I mean, think about our page 3 episode with Sharon J, who was 15 and who wanted to be, a page 3 girl, and then gets, all those older guys basically perving over and taking pictures of her, and there's no comeback for his character at all. This is just an accepted thing, and it's just, and I'd like to think it doesn't still happen today, but it was clearly a thing that was okay for everybody. I'm just reminded that came out 2 years after this. I think it was 2 years after, called Blood on Satan's Claw. It's like one of the folk horror trilogy films with the Mick Wicker Man and Witchfinder General, and the lead actress in it is Linda Day, and she's very good, but she's 14 years old, and she's doing nude scenes in front of a studio with all men. She's 14, and it was like, God, and Natasha Kinski was 14 when she was doing nude scenes in To the Devil a Daughter in 1976. So it's just this, what is it about a certain bloke who just has to, but then the society at the time said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. And as you say, Jean Brodie herself, when she's having that epic meltdown over the slideshow and she's talking about this relationship between Beatrice and Dante, and the girl Beatrice, she's talking about being 14, and she's saying it is possible for a young girl to have a very deep, meaningful love with a much older man. So, she's part of this. But I did find it quite problematic, I have to say. It was a bit...
it was.
Really.
It was. Can I also touch upon something else that I felt was problematic, but also a symptom of the time that it was produced? Was in the denouement of the film, the scenario is that one of the girls writes a letter that the headmistress finds, and it's kind of, a fictionalized version of what they believe that of the affair between Jean Brodie and Mr. Lloyd and her relationship with Mr. Lowther. And it's found by the teacher in the school, handed over to the headmistress. And the headmistress summons Jean Brodie to her office. And this letter kind of basically says, I had an affair with Mr. Lloyd, but now I'm kind of seeing Mr. Lowther at weekends and sleeping with him, etc. And the headmistress demands Jean Brodie's resignation for this, without any proof that it's actually true what's happening, but doesn't make any reference to wanting to fire Mr. Lowther for his part in the supposed encounters. So it's like, okay, so we're going to sack the woman, but we're going to keep the man on for doing exactly the same as the woman's done. So I just felt that was a whole kind of sexist element to it. There was no mention that the man in the relationship had done anything wrong. It was all the women. Yeah,
'twas it ever thus. And the fact is that Mrs. Mackay also can't believe that Teddy Lloyd, the art teacher, who was married with 6 kids, could do anything inappropriate because he's a good Catholic man who's married with 6 kids. So he's, Lowther and Lloyd don't have to worry about their position at all, but that's a story time immemorial. The woman will take the flak, she'll get quietly sidelined while the men will just carry on as per. And women are complicit in running that system just as much as men are. So, as we see here with Miss Mackay.
Something that I wanted to touch on was, which is, I feel as though it's quite apt for what's happened, particularly in the US this week, etc., is, this is set in Edinburgh in 1932. So, this is 13 years after World War I has finished, which isn't that far at all. And already we're seeing the rise of fascism in Europe with the rise of Mussolini and then later on the rise of Franco. And it was that subtle knowing creeping in of fascism within the film that I found really interesting. And it culminates in one of her girls, Mary McGregor, going off to fight because her brother's gone off to fight. So she's gone off to follow him to the war, and which Jean Brodie actively supports her young charge, Mary McGregor, going off to fight for Franco. And then it's revealed that actually her brother went off to fight for the other side, for the anti-fascists, the Republicans, It just kind of made me feel, I thought it was a really clever ploy how it highlighted the naivety that people can attach themselves to authority figures there because they're quite alluring and they say the right things and they offer the people the right things. And was it ever thus? So you could equate that with what's happening with Trump at the moment.
Yeah. And I think, Muriel Spark writes this. I think it's published in 1961. It's quite a recent novel. And, by choosing to put Jean Brodie in this period, she's able to show how vacuous she is with her support of Mussolini and Franco. She could have set it in the 40s or the 50s, but she chose it this. And I think she uses Mussolini and Franco as a way of showing just how vacuous the character actually is. She doesn't really have a clue. She's just caught up in the romance of it all and the uniforms and the spectacle of it, but the nitty-gritty of what it actually represents, it doesn't really cross her mind. It's just completely superficial. The Brodie set are quite interesting, aren't they? And I know the novel actually it's all about them. It's not really about Jean Brodie at all. And what I thought was interesting is the way that their burgeoning sexuality is introduced. So, when they see a picture of the statue of David and they see his wedding, it's all a bit tee-hee-hee, girly. And I quite like they're maturing throughout the film because the film takes place over, I'm not sure what the time scale is, but they're not the same girls that they were at the start of the film at the end of the film.
I think it's 3 years.
Is it? Right. When Mary McGregor finds Jean Brodie and Teddy Lloyd kissing, and then the girls bully her to get out of what's happened. And there's all this, and like Sandy's at one point doing that thing where she's pretending to have a snog, So I thought it was a really interesting way of handling their growing sexuality and their knowledge of sex in a way that was actually quite innocent and actually quite truthful, it felt like. Until bloody dirty Teddy gets his hands on Sandy, and then it was like, oh, there goes that innocence.
It was quite interesting how there was a sense that through her naivety, Jean Brodie in Sandy had created her own monster that was eventually responsible for her downfall. And I thought that Sabrina Franklin, who played Sandy, such a good actress in the way that we just saw these subtleties of just her quietly watching Jean Brodie and processing what Jean Brodie was emoting and what she was saying and the musings and the teaching she was imparting. And Sandy was just watching her, processing everything. And I thought it was really interesting the just way you just started to see her subtly tear it apart in her head and actually start to question it. Jean was very much saying to Sandy that you process things. I see you processing things. I think you'd make a good spy because you've got, kind of strong emotional intelligence. And the way that Sandy kind of turned that around and used it against Jean Brodie, I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, to kind of see her journey from childhood to proper womanhood in a very short, in a space of 3 years. Sandy was the actual main character in this story to a certain extent, wasn't she? She was the catalyst that drove the story forward.
Let's also not forget that despite her vanity and despite her ignorance of what really political is going on in Spain and Italy, Jean Brodie is a fabulous character. She's campus tits, honestly. She's dramatic. She gets some cracking lines, some withering put downs, and when she often has run-ins with Miss Mackay, the staid headmistress. And chrysanthemums, such serviceable flowers. Just lines like that just drip this kind of, So although she's a nightmare, I couldn't help but love her.
Absolutely. And that's just a testament to Maggie Smith. She dominated the screen in every scene that she was in. You just could not take your eyes off her. She was absolutely mesmerising. And her performance was just so considered. Every nuance, every hand movement, the rhythm in her language was just exquisite. And you could see why she won an Oscar for this. It's such a magnificent performance.
Yeah. It's really controlled, isn't it? Like the scene where she is fighting with Miss Mackay to defend her job, you know. And even though it's incredibly intense emotionally, she pitches it so that Jean is never allowed to go over the top with it. She keeps such a tight control of it. I was like, wow, she is firing on all cylinders, you know.
Can we just touch upon Celia Johnson? Because obviously Celia Johnson, who plays Miss Mackay, was, you know, she was an actress of stage and screen of, you know, really high caliber and recognition. But I think her most recognisable role was in Brief Encounter, which was, you know, good couple of decades before this. And there she played the kind of like typical English Rose kind of, you know, conflicted RP character, you know, with a cut glass English accent. And here she was playing an older Scottish character. And it was just such a massive contrast. And the confrontations that she had with Jean Brodie, these two actresses just going against each other, was just mesmerising to watch, wasn't it? It was great.
Yeah.
You could see that they just matched each other line for line.
So that's the end of Miss Jean Brodie and her girls. We'll never see her girls again, and we'll never, ever do that accent again. I can only apologise one final time, but Miss Jean Brodie has been laid to rest. So, David, what are we doing next week?
Well, Lee, you know you're my friend. You're a really, really good friend.
What?
You know that I'll always be there for you when the rain starts to fall.
Oh, God. Are we going to do Friends?
We're going to do Friends. Okay, the time has come to put our friendship to the test, to challenge ourselves. We're going to be looking at an episode of American sitcom Friends.
Fantastic. It's going to be very difficult. Our creative team have advised us that even for things we don't like, we should try and find just one positive thing. And I feel like I'm the only person in the world who hates Friends, who doesn't like it, never liked it. So I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge, but I shall rise to it and grit my teeth and just accept it.
Okay, so you can't blame me for this, okay, because we did have another email today, which I've been keeping up my sleeve, and this is from a lady called Kelly, who says she absolutely loves the podcast, very thought-provoking, takes on so many gems of yesteryear, and she said, I thought it would be good to look at Friends through your lens, because there are some problematic elements to it. I guarantee you that. But, you know, it has been a staple in my life, Friends. I mean, I haven't watched it for a few years because I think it's been relegated to the past, but I know it's still very, very popular. So that's why we're going to be looking at it this time.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Kelly. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
So let's see if we have a repeat of our Pretty Woman episode where we did kind of clash a little bit, but it was great fun. So please look out for that next week. In the meantime, please follow us on Instagram at Podcast Gaze, and please write to us at theproblematicgaze@gmail.com.
Until next time, gazers, farewell, farewell, farewell.
Arrivederci, my girls.
My girls.